Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Tetzaveh. And it is known this year, as in most years when we don't have an extra month of Adar, it is known as Parshas Tetzaveh Shabbos Zochar. This is the Shabbos before Purim, that after the Sedra of Tetzaveh, we will read the Maftir of Zohar, remembering what Amalek did to us as we left Egypt. And there are themes that converge from the Sedra through to Purim in a way that only the Torah can cross these boundaries of time and space and place to give us this beautiful whole. So the first thing I want to start with, although this Sedra is very famously earmarked almost as the Sedra from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu's appearance on the scene. It is the only Sedra that does not have his name explicitly mentioned during the Sedra. And the reason often given is that this was a consequence, if you like, or an indication of how very seriously Hashem takes the words of especially righteous people, but all of us, and how careful we have to be with our words. Because in the episode of the golden calf that we read about in next week's Sedra of Kisisa, when Moshe Rabbeinu is pleading for Hashem to save the Jewish people and not to destroy them as Hashem wants to do, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, if you destroy them, wipe me out, wipe me out from your book. And because every single word that a tzaddik, a righteous person, utters, and really our most beloved leader and the greatest man that whoever lived, the person who achieved the closest connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, certainly his words are sort of really taken so seriously. And so Hashem says, right, I am not going to mention you in this Sedra, as it were, to make sure that those words were actually the prophecy or the request came true. I think that there is another way of looking at it, and this is actually something that was found in the writings of the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, also fits in very consistently with the personality of Moshe Rabbeinu as we know him as Onov Mikol Adam, that he was the most humble of all men. And he would certainly have this absolute joy at the fact that his brother Aharon is getting the job of the priest of the kahuna, the priesthood, and this is something that is very much going to be a very precious and beautiful occasion for Moshe Rabbeinu. And the other extremely interesting point of note is that generally the week that we read the Sedra of Tetzaveh, the week that Moshe Rabbeinu is, as it were, erased in some way from the Sedra, is also the week of the 7th of Adar, which is the Yortzeit, the anniversary of Moshe Rabbeinu's death. And according to the Medrash, this was known by Haman, and this was one of the reasons why he wanted to choose the time of the destruction of the Jewish people around this time, because the loss of their great leader meant that this was an inauspicious time. According to the Medrash, Haman was not aware that the Zayin Adar, the 7th day of Adar, is also the date of Moshe Rabbeinu's birth. And our righteous people never leave us, and we say every day, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Merasha Kahilas Yaakov. Moshe commanded us the Torah. It is an inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov, of Jacob, and we call it Torah's Moshe, the Torah of Moshe. And really, just by looking at the fact that he passed away and thinking that the fate that awaits all flesh was in any way a calamity for the Jewish people. It was the loss of a great leader, and that's always something that requires adjustment and introspection. But Moshe Rabbeinu, the eternal nature of his life is something that actually makes this a very auspicious time. And so all of these things are coming together to really give us this idea that, yes, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in this portion, and he did say those words. He did say, "Erase me from your book." But knowing Moshe Rabbeinu as we do, this is going to be a Sedra that when he has the investiture, as it were, of Aaron, his brother, who becomes the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, this is going to be a moment of partnership and closeness and love and joy. And this brings us to the next concept, that the reason that Aaron is chosen, that he should be the one who is going to wear the priestly garments, which are described in intricate detail in this week's Sedra. Again, similarly as with the Mishkan, we could actually make these garments here and now based on the instructions that we have in the Torah. Although, say, certain stones are called by names, the stones on the breastplate, that we would need guidance in identifying. But generally, with the measurements and the very specific instructions, this is something that we could reproduce now. And please God, we should have the need to do so very, very soon. And so Aaron is going to be wearing the regalia, these trappings of majesty, as it were, that are the hallmark of the Kohen Gadol's clothing, the special clothing that was reserved for him. And one of the reasons given that very beautifully put, and this is actually picked up from the words of the Sedra, which mention that Aaron has to wear the choshen mishpat that on his heart, and we'll just find the reference here. That is Shemos chapter Yud Dalet, so chapter 14, verse 13. Moment. And he says, no, it's not chapter 14, I apologize for that. 14, I was wrong. Let's have a look. 28 verse 29. Yeah, no, so, right, so this is chapter 28 verse 29. And this is V'nosa Aaron es Shemos b'nei Yisrael b'choshen hamishpat, and Aaron shall wear the name of b'nei Yisrael on the breastplate of judgment, al libo, on his heart, b'vo el hakodesh, the zikaron lifnei Hashem tomid, when he comes into the Holy of Holies as a remembrance for Hashem, before Hashem always. And then it repeats it in verse 30, chapter 28, verse 30. V'nosa Aaron es mishpat b'nei Yisrael al libo lifnei Hashem tomid. So this is picked up by Rashi, who comments that the heart that was glad, and this is a reference to Shemos chapter 4, 13, verse 13, mystery solved. And this was going back to the beginning of Shemos, when Moshe Rabbeinu is very unwilling to take on the mission of the leadership of the Jewish people. And one of the things that he's concerned about is that his brother Aharon, who is the older brother, who has been at the coalface of the suffering of the Jewish people in the land of Egypt, as opposed to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a prince in Paro's palace and then escapes to Midian and lives in splendid isolation with the sheep. And while the Jewish people are going through the horrific slavery and oppression, and he's worried, Moshe Rabbeinu is worried that this is not going to go well with his older brother, the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu has to swan in and start taking the most important job. And Hashem reassures Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says in verse 13 of chapter 4 that chapter 14, chapter 4, verse 14, Shemos, Vayecha af Hashem b'Moshe, Vayomer, Halo Aharon achicha halevi yodati ki daber yedaber hu, v'gam hine hu yotze likrosecha, v'ro'acha v'samach belibo. So also, Hashem is getting angry at this point, but Moshe is continuing to refuse the mission, and Hashem is angry against Moshe, and he says, doesn't Aaron, behold, Aaron your brother, I know that he is a very good, he will surely speak for you, and also he is coming out to meet you, and he's going to see you, and he will be happy in his heart. So the comment here, V'samach belibo, is that this heart that was happy at Moshe Rabbeinu's position of leadership is going to be rewarded, that the Choshen Mishpat, that this job of the Kohen Gadol is going to be his, and he is going to wear the Choshen Mishpat on this heart. And I think that this concept of simcha, and simcha Aharon style, and I think that this is something that ties in perfectly with Purim. And we're going to mention the fact that we read Parashas Zachor, that we remember the events of the war against Amalek and the mindset of Amalek, and really that this is read, this Sedra is read, that talks about the investiture of Aharon, that talks about the simcha that earned him that wonderful position as Kohen Gadol. This was the simcha of the love of other people. This was the simcha that Aharon is going to become famous for, of Ohev Shalom v'Rodev Shalom, Ohev es habrios u'makarvan laTorah, that he loves peace, he pursues peace. This is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and he loves people, and he brings them closer to Torah with this love, with this self-effacement. And Aharon is like, in this way, radiating his own joy and spreading it outwards and becoming a very positive role model for the people. And so this is the first master tutorial from the person who really coins what it is to be in a state of simcha, without brushing over the challenges of life, without undermining, without minimizing any of these, but still in any opportunity that he has, he is going to bring joy, and he is going to spread joy. So these outer trappings of majesty, these very beautiful clothes that he is going to wear as Kohen Gadol, they are a reflection of this inner beauty and inner simcha that radiates outwards. And one of the connections of this week's Sedra that talks about these garments and the Megillah is that because certain words are used, l'chavod l'teferes, to describe the priestly garments in our Sedra, they are also used in the Megillah for honor and for splendor. That the Medrash tells us, going to the Megillah, that Achashverosh had actually, from the sacking of the Beis Hamikdash that was destroyed, he had taken the priestly garments, and at the feast he wore these priestly garments. But when Achashverosh wears them, they are a hollow shell, because Achashverosh does not have the mindset of Aharon. Achashverosh is not using the position, using the regalia as a way to inspire people, to uplift people, to make them sense majesty but in a spiritual way. Yes, the majesty is helped along by the beautiful clothes and the jewels, but the majesty comes with majestic behavior. The majesty comes with the love of the people and the idea that he is there to serve the people as Kohen Gadol. He hasn't just got a top job, and he is not abusing his position of Kohuna in this way. And so from this masterclass in simcha that we get from Aharon HaKohen, that we get from the beautiful garments that are described in this week's Sedra, we come to think about the simcha of Purim. And Purim is the 14th of Adar in cities that are without walls. So really today I would think everywhere except for Yerushalayim, 14th of Adar, and 15th of Adar is Shushan Purim, which is observed in Yerushalayim. And the throb of simcha is something that permeates Purim. And I think that the fact that we are reading Tetzaveh, hearing about Simcha Aharon style, and then celebrating Purim with the 4 key mitzvahs. And these 4 key mitzvahs all have an aspect of simcha. That is the common denominator, the underlying thread in all of these 4 mitzvahs. And there is a way to describe these 4 mitzvot of Purim using the letter with mem, the Hebrew letter mem, to the beginning of each word to describe these mitzvahs. So we have mishteh, which means feast, and that corresponds to the Suda, the festive meal that we have on Purim Day. We have matanos le'evyonim, that means gifts to the poor people. And again, this is something that we give out always, but especially on Purim. And according to the Rambam, we should always focus and give most of our resources on matanos le'evyonim, and the amount of tzedakah, the amount of charity that is given out on Purim Day is really quite incredible. So we have mishteh, we have matanos le'evyonim, we have mishloach manos ish re'ehu, and that is the sending of gifts of food, 2 items of food from one to another. And again, this is a way of generating simcha, encouraging neighborly relations. And then the Megillah. This is the Megillah that we read in the evening and in the morning, uniquely, that we reread something after such a short space of time. And so all of these 4 mitzvahs will generate simcha. And it is the simcha that is on a sort of a personal level. As one hears the Megillah, one reflects on the salvation of the Jewish people from the jaws of disaster, as has happened frequently in our history. And we are really, each and every one of us individually needs to internalize that we have been saved, that we have been spared. It's something that is going to be more apparent in the Haggadah, seeing ourselves as part of this personal story. But I think that, many of us are able to think about a personal element of survival and ability to celebrate the mitzvah of Purim and be in a situation. We can hear the Megillah on an individual level, on a communal level, on a national level, on a global level. It's interesting, this letter mem that we can use to describe each of the 4 mitzvahs has the numerical value of 40. And the number 40 is often associated with a transition. So we can go from one state to another after 40. So 40, for example, 40 days and nights of the flood. That was a cleansing process for the terrible violence and corruption at the time preceding the flood. We have this idea of 40 measures of liquid to make a mikveh that will transform a person from being tuma, from being ritually impure, to being tahar, to being ritually pure. And we have the concept that Moshe Rabbeinu is on the mountain learning the Torah for 40 days. And there is a difference in the before and in the after. After he has learnt and absorbed all of this Torah, he comes down and he is a new person. So I think that looking at this word mem as the first letter of all of these 4 mitzvahs of Purim, we can understand that Purim Day is a transformative day. When we celebrate, when we observe these mitzvahs in the correct way, with the correct intentions and absorbing the inner messages of all of these mitzvahs, the simcha that we experience, the joy that we experience, is something that transforms us and is something that we learn from our ancestor, Aharon HaKohen, whom really is given the prominence in this week's Sedra, with the blessing of his brother Moshe Rabbeinu. And I mentioned that Zachar is the remembering of Amalek, and it's something that we read most often together with Tetzaveh, the Shabbos before Purim. And the mindset of Amalek is that everything's random. There's no divine plan, there's no divine intervention in our lives. And I think that by just understanding that we are reading these themes that converge over time and place and space with such regularity, that we are able to say that this is something that will defeat the mindset of Amalek, that Asher korcha baderech, who happened who chanced upon you, just happened to find you coming out of Egypt. And there was nothing happenstance. This was something that was premeditated by Amalek. But more important, this is something that is a part of their evil way of looking at the world, way of looking at things, as an excuse to pretend that they are in charge and they can do what they like. And so I think that all of this is coming together in the Sedra of Tetzaveh that we're reading before Purim, and looking again at this minute detail that we're able to see. And this is something that needs to give us hope and encouragement that, please God, bimheira v'yomeinu, speedily in our days, we should be having to embroider and make the special garments of the Kohen Gadol and use these in the right way to bring the love and the simcha that we learn so beautifully from our ancestor Aharon HaKohen, and the beautiful relationship and partnership that he had with his brother Moshe Rabbeinu. Thank you very, very much for listening. Wishing you Shabbat Shalom and Purim Sameach. And please God, it should be a month of simcha and healing and salvation for everybody everywhere. Thank you.